I'm gonna blow your mind with something terrifying. The average American now consumes 126 grams of sugar daily in 2025, which adds up to nearly 100 pounds per year. Here's the kicker. Your brain's reward system responds to sugar much like addiction pathways, making it incredibly hard to resist. The food industry has spent decades optimizing the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt to maximize pleasure and consumption. And they're making billions while you're stuck in a glucose roller coaster that's slowly destroying your health. What I'm about to show you will make you question every single thing in your pantry right now, starting with something that might make you angry about your own childhood. The sugar conspiracy that started in your childhood. That bowl of Frosted Flakes you ate as a kid contains 12 grams of sugar per serving. That's a serious sugar hit disguised as breakfast. But here's what's really messed up about this whole situation. Cereal companies knew exactly what they were doing when they put that sugar bomb in a colorful box and aimed it directly at your developing brain. Back in the 1970s, companies like Kellogg's and General Mills started using sophisticated marketing research to test exactly what would make kids obsessed with their products. These weren't marketing people making random guesses about what kids might like. These were systematic studies testing how color combinations on cereal boxes would catch a child's attention from across the grocery store aisle. They figured out that placing cereals at eye level for kids would increase sales by 23%. They learned that cartoon mascots needed to make direct eye contact with children on the box to create what they called an emotional connection. Take Tony the Tiger. He wasn't just a random cartoon character. He was specifically designed to represent strength and energy that kids wanted to associate with themselves. Every single detail was tested and refined based on how it affected children's desire to consume the product. Tony the Tiger is basically a drug dealer with better marketing and a catchphrase. Think about it, he shows up everywhere, he's got that memorable slogan, and he's always promising you're gonna feel great if you just try his product. The only difference is that Tony's got Saturday morning commercials and colorful packaging instead of hanging out on street corners. The toy prizes inside cereal boxes represented the next level of psychological manipulation. Marketing studies showed that the anticipation of finding a prize increased brand loyalty and repeat purchases among children. Kids would get excited about the possibility of finding a toy, and their brains would associate that positive feeling with the cereal itself. This created what researchers called anticipatory addiction. Children would crave the cereal not just for the taste, but for the emotional experience of the potential reward. These companies understood something that most parents didn't. They were programming children's brains during the most critical period of development. Research shows that early eating patterns established in childhood set lifelong food preferences and consumption habits. Between ages 2 and 7, children's brains are forming the neural pathways that will determine their relationship with food for life. Every time a kid ate sugary cereal and experienced that rush of sweetness, their brain was literally being wired to crave sugar. The bright colors, the cartoon characters, the toys, and the sugar hit were all working together to create what neuroscientists now call food imprinting. This childhood programming didn't just disappear when you became an adult. It became the foundation for lifelong sugar craving patterns. Your brain learned to associate sugar with comfort, reward, and happiness during those critical early years. When you feel stressed as an adult and reach for something sweet, you're not making a conscious choice, you're following neural pathways that were carved into your brain when you were 5 years old eating Lucky Charms while watching cartoons. The thing you need to understand is that your current sugar cravings aren't personal failures or lack of willpower. They're engineered responses that were programmed into your brain before you were old enough to understand what was happening. Food companies spent millions of dollars and decades of research to figure out exactly how to make you crave their products for life. And they started working on you when your brain was most vulnerable to this kind of programming. Food scientists working for these companies use a term called the Bliss point to describe the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt that triggers maximum consumption. This isn't some accidental discovery. It's the result of thousands of hours of laboratory testing using focus groups, brain imaging, and behavioral analysis. They know exactly how much sugar to add to make you want more without making you feel sick. They know how to balance the fat content to make the product dissolve perfectly in your mouth. They understand how salt enhances the perception of sweetness and makes you crave more. The Bliss Point research extends far beyond just cereal. It's now applied to everything from crackers to yogurt to bread. Food manufacturers have detailed maps of human taste preferences and exactly how to trigger the brain's reward system for maximum effect. They know that combining sugar with certain textures will make people eat 40% more than they intended. They understand that specific flavor profiles will override the brain's natural satiety signals. This level of scientific manipulation has created a generation of adults who struggle with food cravings that feel completely out of their control. When you can't stop eating certain foods, when you find yourself thinking about snacks throughout the day, when you feel like you're addicted to sugar, you're experiencing the exact responses these companies designed and tested to achieve. The implications for adult eating behaviors and health outcomes are staggering. Adults who were exposed to this childhood programming show measurably different brain responses to sugar compared to people who grew up eating traditional diets. Their reward systems require higher levels of stimulation to achieve satisfaction, which means they need more sugar to feel the same pleasure response. Their stress responses are tied to sugar consumption in ways that make emotional eating almost inevitable. The food industry created what researchers now call hyper-palatable food environments, where every processed product is designed to trigger overconsumption. Your local grocery store contains thousands of products that have been scientifically engineered to hijack your brain's reward system, and most people have no idea this manipulation is even happening. Here's the number that's gonna make you sick. The average American child now consumes their body weight in sugar every single year. A 50-pound 7-year-old is eating 50 pounds of sugar annually, which breaks down to more than 2 ounces of pure sugar every single day. This isn't happening because kids have poor self-control or because parents don't care. It's happening because the food industry has spent 50 years perfecting the science of making sugar irresistible to developing brains. But what's really going to shock you is what sugar is actually doing to your brain on a neurochemical level. Your brain on sugar is literally like your brain on cocaine. When you eat sugar, your brain activates the same dopamine reward circuits that respond to addictive substances. Sugar triggers similar reward pathways as some addictive drugs, leading to powerful cravings that feel completely beyond your control. Neuroimaging studies show that sugar consumption lights up your brain's reward center in ways that create genuine neurochemical dependency. Both sugar and addictive substances target what scientists call the brain's reward center, which is this ancient system that evolved to help humans survive. When our ancestors found ripe fruit or honey, their brains would flood with dopamine to make sure they remembered where to find these rare, high-energy foods again. This reward system was designed to activate maybe once or twice a month when you stumbled across something naturally sweet in the wild. It was never meant to handle the constant bombardment of refined sugar that modern humans consume every single day. The dopamine release you get from sugar follows a familiar pattern. There's an immediate spike that makes you feel amazing, followed by a drop that leaves you wanting more. Your brain's reward pathways don't distinguish between different sources of dopamine stimulation, they just know they want that feeling again. This is why you can finish an entire sleeve of cookies and still want more, even when you're physically full and mentally disgusted with yourself for eating them. Here's what's really messed up about this whole situation. At least drug dealers don't put their product in baby food and market it as essential nutrition for growing children. Sugar pushers have somehow convinced parents that feeding kids sugar-laden cereals, juices, and snacks is normal child care. The research on sugar's addictive potential gets even more disturbing when you look at animal studies. Scientists at Princeton University ran studies where they gave rats access to both sugar water and cocaine. The rats chose sugar over cocaine consistently. When researchers tried to get the sugar-addicted rats to switch to cocaine, most of them refused. The sugar had created stronger addiction patterns than an actual controlled substance. These results have been replicated in multiple laboratories using different methodologies. Rats with intermittent access to sugar showed all the classic signs of addiction. They binged when sugar was available, they showed withdrawal symptoms when it was removed, and they would work harder to get sugar than rats would work to get cocaine. Research by Rada and colleagues found that sugar consumption triggered dopamine release in the rat's nucleus accumbens shell, the same brain region involved in drug addiction. What's happening in your brain when you eat sugar is that you're hijacking a survival system that took millions of years to develop. Your reward pathways evolved to activate when you found foods that would keep you alive during famines and harsh seasons. The dopamine release was meant to be rare and special, creating powerful memories that would help you survive. But now you're triggering this ancient survival system multiple times per day with processed foods that contain concentrated amounts of sugar your ancestors never encountered. Every time you eat sugar, you're essentially telling your brain that you found a life-saving energy source that needs to be remembered and sought out again. Your neural pathways start to prioritize sugar-seeking behavior over other activities because your brain thinks this is critical for your survival. This is why you can be completely focused on work or a conversation, but the moment someone mentions ice cream or cookies, your attention immediately shifts to thoughts about sweet food. The more sugar you consume, the more your brain adapts to expect these dopamine hits. Your neurons literally restructure themselves to accommodate the constant flood of sugar-induced dopamine. The receptors that respond to dopamine become less sensitive, which means you need more sugar to get the same pleasurable feeling you used to get from smaller amounts. This is called tolerance, and it's the same process that happens with addictive substances. What food companies figured out decades ago is that they could exploit this biological vulnerability for massive profits. They discovered that by adding sugar to foods that never contained it naturally, bread, pasta sauce, salad dressing, crackers, they could make people crave these products in ways that had nothing to do with actual hunger or nutritional needs. They weren't just selling food anymore, they were selling neurochemical experiences designed to create repeat customers. The food industry now employs teams of neuroscientists and food chemists whose entire job is to understand how different combinations of sugar, salt, and fat affect brain chemistry. They use brain imaging technology to see exactly which formulations create the strongest dopamine responses. They test thousands of variations of their products to find the precise combination that will make people eat the most while feeling the least satisfied. Brain imaging studies are showing sugar addiction patterns in children as young as 5 years old. When researchers put kids in MRI machines and show them pictures of sugary foods, their brains light up in the same areas that activate in adult drug addicts when they see images of their preferred substance. These children haven't even developed full impulse control yet, and their reward systems are already being rewired by sugar consumption. When adults try to quit sugar, they experience withdrawal symptoms that mirror drug withdrawal. People report headaches, mood swings, irritability, anxiety, and intense cravings that can last for days or weeks. Their sleep patterns get disrupted, they have trouble concentrating, and they often experience what researchers call anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure from activities they normally enjoy. This is why quitting sugar feels impossible for most people. It's not a matter of willpower or self-control. Your brain is literally experiencing neurochemical withdrawal. The difference is that sugar withdrawal doesn't get any medical recognition or support, so people think they're just weak or lacking discipline when they can't stick to a sugar-free diet. Your brain adapted to expect regular hits of sugar-induced dopamine, and when you remove that source, it takes time for your neural pathways to readjust to normal levels of stimulation. The withdrawal symptoms you experience are your brain's way of demanding that you restore the artificial dopamine levels it became accustomed to receiving from sugar consumption. But sugar addiction is just the beginning of how the food industry has weaponized your biology against you. The real manipulation happens when they combine sugar with other ingredients in ways that make resistance practically impossible. The food industry's secret weapon, ultra-processed addiction engineering. Food manufacturers research flavor and texture combinations to create what researchers call hyper-palatable products, foods engineered to hit the bliss point that triggers maximum consumption. Ever wonder why you literally cannot eat just one potato chip? That slogan wasn't just clever marketing. It was a scientific admission that these foods are designed to override your body's natural satiety signals. The reason you can't stop eating certain processed foods has nothing to do with your willpower, and everything to do with systematic research into ingredient combinations that make you lose control. These companies operate specialized research facilities where food scientists use advanced equipment to engineer products that trigger overconsumption. Think about how absurd this is. We've got brilliant minds with advanced degrees whose entire career is dedicated to figuring out how to make you eat more than your body needs. They're using serious scientific methods to create foods that you physically cannot stop eating. The process involves testing thousands of different combinations of sugar, salt, fat, and various additives. Food scientists create hundreds of versions of the same product, each with slightly different ingredient ratios, then test them on focus groups while monitoring eating behavior. They measure how fast people eat each version, how much they consume before feeling satisfied, and most importantly, how quickly they want more. Companies have dedicated teams whose job is to eat products all day while researchers record every detail of the consumption experience. They track which combinations make people eat faster, which ones make them reach for more immediately, and which formulations override the brain's natural satiety signals. This isn't guesswork, it's precision engineering designed to exploit specific biological vulnerabilities in human appetite regulation. One key discovery involves foods that dissolve quickly in your mouth, bypassing normal satiety signals. Your brain tracks food intake partly through mechanical feedback from chewing and swallowing. When food dissolves almost instantly on your tongue, your brain gets confused about how much you've actually eaten and fails to activate normal fullness responses. Popular snack foods demonstrate this principle perfectly. The texture and flavor are formulated to dissolve immediately when they hit your saliva, creating what researchers describe as incomplete satiety signaling. Your mouth experiences intense flavor, but your brain receives minimal signals that you've consumed substantial calories. This is why you can eat an entire bag of certain snacks and still feel hungry. Your brain doesn't register that you've eaten anything because the food disappeared too quickly. The engineering extends beyond taste and texture. Food scientists manipulate temperature, sound, and visual properties to enhance consumption patterns. They discovered that certain types of crunch activate pleasure centers in the brain through audio feedback. The sound of biting into a perfectly crispy snack triggers dopamine release before the food even reaches your taste buds. Companies spend significant resources testing different preparation methods to achieve the exact crunch that maximizes brain reward responses. Temperature manipulation represents another sophisticated approach. Ice cream manufacturers engineer their products to hit your tongue at precisely the right temperature to maximize taste bud activation while minimizing the brain's natural response to cold, which normally signals satiety. They add specific ingredients that create textures that melt at exactly body temperature for maximum flavor release and minimum satiety signaling. Branding and product placement influence impulse purchases according to marketing studies. Food companies understand optimal shelf positioning and package designs that trigger immediate desire responses. The colors, fonts, and imagery are carefully selected to maximize appeal and create urgency around purchase decisions. The profits from engineering highly palatable foods are staggering. Companies that successfully create frequent consumers of their products see profit margins that rival other major industries. Internal food industry research shows that the top consumers account for the majority of total consumption for most processed food categories. These heavy users aren't just loyal customers, they're people whose eating patterns have been influenced by engineered food products. Food company executives track metrics related to consumption frequency and product appeal to measure how successfully their formulations create repeat purchase behavior. They monitor when focus group participants report thinking about their products throughout the day or feeling strong preferences for specific items. The language used in internal communications focuses on creating emotional connections and brand loyalty. The scope of this engineering has reached massive proportions in 2025. Ultra-processed foods now make up the majority of the American food supply, which means most of what's available in grocery stores has been optimized for palatability and consumption. Walk through any supermarket and you're surrounded by thousands of products designed to maximize appeal and override natural appetite regulation. The center aisles of grocery stores have become environments where making moderate choices requires constantly resisting products designed to promote overconsumption. Every package, every flavor combination, every texture has been optimized through testing to encourage purchasing and eating more than your body needs. The food industry has created conditions where healthy eating requires fighting against products engineered to undermine self-control. Food companies now invest heavily in palatability research, employing specialists in taste science, behavioral psychology, and consumer preferences. Their focus is understanding how to make food as appealing and irresistible as possible. This represents a significant shift in how food products are developed and marketed. This level of systematic optimization explains why so many people struggle with food cravings that feel completely beyond their control. When you can't stop eating certain foods, when you find yourself thinking about snacks constantly, when you feel drawn to specific products, you're not experiencing personal weakness. You're experiencing biological responses that have been carefully studied and optimized by teams of researchers. But the real damage from these engineered foods isn't just that they make you eat more. It's what happens inside your body when you consume them. The glucose spike roller coaster that's destroying your life. Here's something that's gonna mess with your head. You eat a bagel for breakfast expecting energy, and 30 minutes later you feel like you got hit by a truck. You drink orange juice thinking you're getting vitamins and natural energy, then spend the next 2 hours feeling exhausted and craving more food. This happens because what you think is giving you energy is actually putting your body through a biological nightmare that leaves you more drained than when you started. When you eat sugar or refined carbs, your blood glucose shoots up like a rocket, then crashes down like a lead balloon. This isn't a gentle rise and fall, it's a violent spike that can take your blood sugar from normal levels to diabetic levels within minutes, even if you don't have diabetes. Your body experiences this as a biological emergency and responds with a cascade of stress hormones and inflammatory reactions that affect every single cell in your body. Glucose spikes are like that friend who shows up to the party super excited and energetic, gets everyone amped up, then suddenly crashes hard and brings down the entire mood of the room. Except instead of ruining one party, glucose spikes are ruining your cellular party multiple times every single day. Continuous glucose monitor studies show multiple spikes per day in many people, and most have absolutely no idea this is happening to them. Every time your blood sugar spikes, you're stressing the mitochondria inside your cells. Mitochondria are these tiny powerhouses that create actual energy for your body. They're what make you feel alive and vibrant. When glucose floods your system too quickly, these mitochondria get overwhelmed and can contribute to the fatigue you experience. It's like forcing a car engine to redline constantly. Eventually, the engine struggles to perform properly. The mitochondrial stress from glucose spikes creates a sick irony where the foods you eat for energy actually interfere with your body's ability to create energy efficiently. Each spike makes your mitochondria work harder while you feel more tired. This is why people who eat high-sugar diets often feel exhausted all the time despite consuming thousands of calories. Their cellular energy production is compromised and can't convert food into usable energy effectively. The crash that follows every glucose spike is where things get really sinister. When your blood sugar plummets after spiking, your brain interprets this as a life-threatening emergency. It floods your system with stress hormones and triggers intense cravings for quick energy, meaning more sugar. This crash doesn't just make you hungry, it makes you specifically crave the exact foods that caused the spike in the first place. Your brain releases dopamine when you eat sugar, the same neurotransmitter involved in drug addiction. The spike and crash cycle creates what researchers call a sugar addiction cycle, where the crash from one sugar hit triggers cravings for the next sugar hit. You're not weak for craving sugar after eating sugar, you're experiencing a designed biological response that keeps you consuming more of the substance that's damaging your body. This cycle affects every system in your body because glucose spikes trigger systemic inflammation that reaches your brain, your joints, your skin, your digestive system, and your hormonal system. The inflammation from glucose spikes shows up as acne, eczema, and psoriasis on your skin. It creates brain fog and mood swings in your nervous system. It disrupts sleep patterns and creates hormonal imbalances that affect everything from your energy levels to your reproductive health. The constant biological stress from frequent glucose spikes puts your body in a perpetual state of emergency response. Your adrenal glands are constantly pumping out stress hormones. Your immune system is constantly fighting inflammation. Your pancreas is constantly overproducing insulin. This chronic stress accelerates aging and creates the perfect conditions for chronic diseases to develop. These aren't just people eating obvious junk food. These are people consuming what they think are normal, healthy meals. A bowl of oatmeal with fruit spikes glucose. Whole wheat toast spikes glucose. A supposedly healthy smoothie with fruit and yogurt creates massive glucose spikes that last for hours. The long-term consequences of this constant glucose roller coaster are showing up in ways that researchers are just beginning to understand. People who experience frequent glucose spikes have higher rates of cardiovascular disease, autoimmune conditions, and accelerated cognitive decline. The World Health Organization recommends a maximum of 25 grams of sugar per day, but most people consume 3 to 4 times that amount without realizing it. Here's what's really gonna blow your mind. Research connects chronic glucose dysregulation to cognitive decline and brain health issues. When your blood sugar crashes after a spike, it doesn't just affect your energy, it affects your neurotransmitter production and brain function. The inflammation from glucose spikes can damage brain tissue and disrupt the neural pathways involved in mood regulation and cognitive function. Studies show connections between blood sugar dysregulation and brain health that are so strong that people with diabetes have significantly higher risks of developing cognitive problems compared to people with stable blood sugar. The connection between glucose regulation and brain function is becoming impossible to ignore. The reason you feel terrible despite eating what seems like normal food is that normal food in 2025 isn't actually normal by historical standards. The processed foods that make up most people's diets are specifically designed to create glucose spikes that trigger overconsumption. Your fatigue, brain fog, mood swings, and constant hunger aren't personality flaws or signs of aging. They're symptoms of glucose dysregulation caused by eating foods that spike your blood sugar multiple times every day. When you understand that glucose spikes are creating inflammation, stressing your cellular energy production, and triggering addictive craving cycles, suddenly all those mysterious health problems start making perfect sense. But here's where things get really weird. Despite all this excess sugar and all these calories, your body is somehow convinced that it's starving. Why your body thinks it's starving in the land of plenty? This metabolic chaos creates the most insane contradiction in modern health. We live in a country where 73% of adults are overweight or obese, but simultaneously 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy and suffering from nutrient deficiencies. People are consuming more calories than ever before in human history, while their bodies are literally starving at the cellular level. Your body can be drowning in excess calories, while your cells are screaming for actual nutrition. The reason this biological nightmare is happening comes down to the difference between calories and nutrients. Processed foods provide massive amounts of calories from sugar, refined flour, and industrial oils, but they contain almost no vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, or other compounds that your cells actually need to function. When you eat a 600-calorie fast food meal, you're flooding your system with energy your body can't properly use, while providing almost none of the micronutrients your cellular machinery requires to convert that energy into usable fuel. Your body is like a confused tourist trying to navigate a foreign city with a completely broken GPS system. It knows it needs to get somewhere important, but every signal it's receiving is contradictory and misleading. Your hunger signals are firing constantly because your cells aren't getting what they need, but the foods available in the modern environment provide calories without the nutrients required to satisfy cellular hunger. This creates what researchers call cellular hunger, a state where your individual cells are literally starving for nutrients even when your stomach is full and your fat stores are overflowing. Your mitochondria need specific vitamins and minerals to produce energy. Your neurotransmitter production requires particular amino acids and cofactors. Your immune system depends on antioxidants and trace elements to function properly. When you eat processed foods that lack these essential nutrients, your cells send out distress signals that your brain interprets as hunger. The cellular starvation signals don't just make you hungry, they make you specifically crave more processed foods because your brain associates the temporary energy hit from sugar and refined carbs with relief from the starvation signals. This creates a vicious cycle where eating nutrient-poor foods makes you hungrier for more nutrient-poor foods. Your body keeps demanding more calories because it's desperately searching for the nutrients it needs to function, but the foods you're eating provide more empty calories instead of actual nutrition. Think about how backwards this situation really is. You eat a giant meal that contains 1,200 calories, but 2 hours later you're ravenously hungry again. This isn't happening because you didn't eat enough food. It's happening because your cells still haven't received the nutrients they need to produce energy, synthesize hormones, or repair cellular damage. Your brain interprets this nutrient deficiency as starvation and triggers intense hunger signals to try to get you to find actual nutrition. The problem gets exponentially worse when insulin resistance enters the picture. Even when your blood contains plenty of glucose from all the processed foods you've eaten, insulin resistance makes it impossible for your cells to actually access that energy. It's like having a full gas tank in your car but a broken fuel pump. The energy is there, but your cellular machinery can't use it effectively. Insulin resistance turns your body into a metabolic prison where energy gets trapped in your bloodstream and fat cells while your muscles, brain, and organs remain starved for fuel. Your pancreas keeps pumping out more insulin trying to force glucose into resistant cells, but this just makes the resistance worse and creates more inflammation throughout your body. Meanwhile, your brain receives constant signals that energy isn't available at the cellular level, so it triggers more hunger and more cravings for quick energy sources. This metabolic dysfunction explains why people can eat enormous amounts of food and still feel unsatisfied and constantly hungry. Their cells are genuinely starving despite being surrounded by excess calories that can't be properly utilized. The hunger they feel isn't psychological or emotional. It's a legitimate biological response to cellular energy deprivation caused by insulin resistance and nutrient deficiencies. The connection between this cellular communication breakdown and the obesity and diabetes epidemics becomes crystal clear when you understand that both conditions are fundamentally about energy regulation problems. Obesity isn't caused by eating too many calories. It's caused by eating calories that can't be properly utilized by cells, leading to energy storage in fat tissue while organs remain undernourished. Type 2 diabetes isn't caused by eating too much sugar. It's caused by eating processed foods that create insulin resistance and cellular starvation. Studies from 2025 show that 88% of American adults now have at least one marker of metabolic dysfunction, including elevated blood sugar, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, or dyslipidemia. This is happening in the wealthiest country in human history with unprecedented access to food. The problem isn't food scarcity, it's food quality and the complete disconnection between what's available to eat and what human cells actually need to function. This biological confusion doesn't just affect your physical health, it completely disrupts your mood, energy levels, and decision-making capabilities. When your brain isn't getting steady fuel from properly functioning cellular energy production, you experience brain fog, mood swings, anxiety, and depression. Your cognitive function depends on stable energy delivery to neurons, and when that energy delivery is disrupted by glucose spikes, insulin resistance, and nutrient deficiencies, your mental performance suffers dramatically. The constant stress of cellular starvation also affects your decision-making around food. When your brain is desperately searching for nutrients and energy, it prioritizes short-term survival over long-term health.